Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope you all had a lovely Thanksgiving. I do apologize for the late content for this month. I hope that I will be able to do that better in the next coming year. So today's video is going to be about the Radioactive Dead Space filler for the Hammer Primed series of blasters. The Hammer Shot, Sweet Revenge, 6SH are the ones that I know this works with. Now, why am I doing a video on this? Because multiple people have told me they've had problems following Radio's installation guide. So I'm going to be going in detail, step by step, from the opening of the blaster, to the disassembly, to the actual installation, on how to properly get this installed and working properly in your Hammer Primed pistol. I hope you all will enjoy the video. If you do, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you want to support me to help me do more of these types of videos, I will have my Patreon down in the description, along with my Instagram and Facebook. Another thing is I will be uploading Morox mod tips, the first episode, at the end of December. The last Monday of December. So make sure to keep that in mind. I hope you all enjoy the video. Let's get into it. Boy. Alright, so I'm going to go over the tools and materials that you will need to install this piece. First, you will need a screwdriver. Then you will need a pair of flush cutters. They don't have to be these exact ones, but metal tips usually do work nicer. This isn't needed, but I personally like to use it for getting the screws out of the posts. Some tweezers, that will definitely help you out in getting small parts. And any sort of knife. Make sure you are being very careful when messing around with sharp objects. If you are under the age of 13, make sure you have a parent's permission or a parent present. And you will need either one of these two things. You will need super glue. I personally use Gorilla Glue. Or epoxy. This will also be listed down in the description with the actual piece itself. This was gotten off of Out of Darts. I use this because it is very strong and makes a very nice seal. So, I will be showing you how to do it both ways. Let's get into it. So, first thing we're going to be doing is taking apart the Hammer Shot. Now, this is a customer's commission Hammer Shot, and the reason I am showing this one particularly is because I need to do this Dead Space filler modification on these two blasters. I will only be showing one, really, because, you know, it's going to be repetitive, but I will show you how to do it both ways, as mentioned. That'll make sense in a bit. So, another thing you may want is something to keep your screws in and your pieces, because there are a lot of pieces in this blaster and you do not want to lose them. There is not a single piece in here that can be removed without causing the blaster to not function. So, we're going to get to opening it. There's not any, at least in the new ones as far as I'm aware, there are not any different types of screws, so it's not really important to keep them apart. So, I'll get back to y'all when the blaster is opened. So, now that we have the blaster open, I'm going to show you where and how to disassemble it. So, even though this is a modified version, this does mostly stay the same up here. You will want to pull out the cylinder for ease of, you know, getting the whole assembly out. Now, since it's such a big piece, you don't really need to put it anywhere specific, just obviously someplace where you can see it and remember where it will be. And then the hammer shot internals will come out all in one assembly, which is one reason why people really still love hammer shots and hammer shot derivatives. Now, you can put your shell, if you want to, you know, work on it separately. You can put that somewhere else for right now. I prefer to keep everything in a sort of box/bucket to keep all the pieces together. Now, the first thing you will want to remove out of this assembly is the spring. The reason you want to remove the spring first is because of the fact of if you try to remove this and this gets bumped, this will go flying and may cause you a couple other problems. So, how I do that is, if you see right there, there's a bit of a lip of the spring. You want to get your screwdriver under that, and that should keep the spring just right there. And then you just turn counterclockwise, and there you go. There's your spring. Now again, you will want to put that wherever you're going to be keeping your hardware/parts. I'm putting mine right there. Now, I've heard on some different hammer shots they don't have this, so it may vary from what hammer primed pistol derivative you are messing with, but for the most part, there are going to be 3 screws, one there, and one there. You're going to want to remove those, and again, they are not any sort of different size, so you can keep them with your other screws. Now, give me 1 second to remove this. That was easy. And again, you'll want to move this plate to wherever you will obviously remember where it'll be. Now, the next thing you will want to take out, as you can see, the internals tend to sproing, so be careful of that. You will want to remove the trigger first, just like that. Put that right there. And then you will have this spring right here. You will want to put that, obviously, with your other hardware. And again, this part right here does tend to differ, but sometimes these little pins, this silver pin and black pin, sometimes those will be captive, and sometimes, as you can see on this one, they will not be. So I tend to just remove them and set them aside for later, for ease of messing with the internals. And then you will pull out your hammer and plunger assembly right here. Now, since this is all one piece, it's pretty easy to keep together. You don't really have to tear that apart anymore. And then, when you turn the assembly around, you will see this arm and spring. You only want to remove the spring so you don't lose it. This arm mostly stays captive, so you don't need to fear about losing that. This also depends on the build. Sometimes it's really stiff in here, this little peg. Sometimes this just falls right out. So you might want to remove that and put that aside. And now to our plunger. On every single one that I've seen, you will have this little notch right here that'll stop the plunger from going backwards. You're going to want to put your screwdriver in like this, right in front of it, push down and back. That should release it from that little piece right there and allow you to easily push that backwards. Now from there, you're going to want to turn your plunger tube clockwise and pull out. Now your plunger tube is free. Now here's where the actual modification gets into. Again, I know I've been saying this a lot, but that's because Nerf tends to do things differently from blaster to blaster for some reason. Sometimes these will be solvent welded, and sometimes they will not be. This one right here appears to be solvent welded, as far as I can tell. but this isn't going to matter, really. So you're going to want to cut off these little clips, which I will show you in a second, either way. So don't worry too much if it's solvent welded or not. That mostly just means whether your job's going to be easy or hard. So I'm going to pull that off. Now, even though I did say that it looks like it's solvent welded, I'm going to check with a flat head to see if it actually is or not. So let's check right here. It doesn't appear to be. Let us see. So it actually appears that this might not be solvent welded. Maybe. So I'm just gonna bend that. Oh, nope, was not solvent welded. That's good. So to get that off, if it's not solvent welded, you're just going to want to grab a flathead screwdriver or a flat piece of metal material, and you're going to want to go in from the top, push down, and just keep bending until it gets to a spot where it looks like it'll free itself. You're going to want to do that on both sides, and then pull off the orange piece. If yours is solvent welded, what you will want to do is grab your flush cutters. That's where these come in. And you're basically just going to want to go from here, or at least this is how I do it. You're going to want to go down from here and just keep snipping away at the plastic until you get to right where that little ledge is. And you want to be careful from there because, as you can see, there's a little lip under that. You don't want to break that. Because that is where I see people have lots of problems with seal. So, all we're going to want to do is pry off these side little plastic bits. Like that. And as you can see, 3D printing can be a little stiff sometimes, so give me 1 second. Yeah, I can definitely see again where people have an issue. Now, here's the thing. After you get that on there, and I'm doing it this way to show you, you'll see that those little pieces right there, where this was sitting on, are stopping it from being fully flush. So, what you're going to want to do is you want to grab your flush cutter, and you're just going to want to slowly try to chip away at that without trying to damage your plunger tube. Because again, damaged plunger tube equals bad plunger tube. So I'm just going to chip away slowly at this. You're going to want to have some patience with this because, again, obviously, you want to make sure you don't damage the actual plunger tube itself. Now, after you get it done down right there, you can use sandpaper, preferably around 160, 120 grit. But I'm going to continue with the flush cutters because mostly out of my own convenience. But you can do it about either way. So, let's see if we cleared that away enough. Nope, still need a little bit to go. Alright, so now that we have that all clean, we are going to once again check to see if, again, we can actually fit it on there. And it should fit just like that. Now, I'm going to check it with a hammer real quick to make sure that it can go down any further. If not, then we will come back and trim away a bit of that top. So let's see. Alright, so after checking it with a hammer, got it down all the way. So how I did that was I just put it against a flat surface, and with a hammer gave it about 2-3 taps. You don't want to do it too hard because then you can crack the 3D printing and then your dead space filler is useless. So now that we've checked our fit, as you can see, it looks nice down in there. Now I'm going to get this back off and show you how to put the adhesive or epoxy in. 1 second. Alright, we are back. I got that back off. Now, here's where the next step comes in. I will let you know, if you do choose to do my epoxy method, you are going to need rubber gloves, and you would want to be in a ventilated area. Now, ventilated can mean a whole bunch of things. I mostly use it as just a room with an open window and a fan, but it can just be an open window. Just make sure that if you start to smell it too much, that you stop for a sec and allow the room some time to clear out. The reason you want to wear gloves is because this stuff can be toxic if left on your hands for too long, like most adhesives and most stuff along that lines. So make sure you are using proper precautions. Now with epoxy, it's similar to clay. Well, actually it's just like clay. As you can see, there is a darker piece, well, there's darker in the middle and lighter on the outside. What you're going to want to do is take off your desired amount of epoxy. I can't say exactly how much that'll be, so I'll just have to show you throughout the process. But what you're going to want to do with it, you're just going to want to meet it together. And what that means is you're just going to want to basically play with it, just like mush it together until it gets to a sort of a darker color, which I will show you in a second once I'm done meeting it together. This is a really important step of the process. If you do not do this, it will cause the epoxy to not act properly. These two chemicals, well, not chemicals, these two clays need to be mixed for the epoxy to work properly. Now, once you're done meeting it, it should look like that, a sort of darker color. And you're just going to want to grab tiny little pieces of it. And you're just going to want to break that off around the edges. You may need to put a little bit less, depending on the fit of the piece. Just enough to make a solid seal. So, I'll get back to y'all when I'm done with that, and then we shall go on with the rest. Whee! Alrighty, so what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to put a layer of it around the edges, and you're going to want to mush it together. Make sure it's all together in one piece, because if it's not, then you will definitely have a problem with seal. So it's really important that you pay attention and get that right. Now, once you have that down on there, next step is going to be to put on the actual dead space filler. Make sure you know the right direction, which is facing like this, having this one peg facing you. If it's not like this, you have ruined your plunger tube and this, so make sure you pay close attention. Then I'm just going to put that on there. Now I'm going to tap this with a hammer to make the proper seal, and I shall be right back. Alright, we are back. So, now that we got that down on there, you're going to want to wait about 15 minutes for that to set. And then once that happens, you're going to want to grab some sandpaper and go around the edges until that is perfectly flush. I will show what that looks like in a second, but that's how it should look like. And make sure you hit that, like, again, you don't want to hit it too hard because then you'll crack 3D printing. But you want to make sure you hit it just enough to make sure it gets down to right flush with the piece. Otherwise, again, you'll have seal issues. So, I shall be back once this sets. Whee! Alrighty, we are back. So, after 15 minutes, it should be rock solid. Now, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to take your flush cutters and you're just gonna want to go around and trim away most of the excess. And I will show you what that should look like in a second. Because the more material that is on the outside of the plunger tube, the harder it will be to get the plunger tube in. So it's really important you get that as smooth as you can. So, there we go. Now, if you want to, which I highly recommend, go around with whatever sandpaper you have handy. I'm personally going to be using 120 to 180 grit. And you're just going to want to go around the plunger tube. And get that nice and smooth. Until it looks like that. Nice and smooth indeed. And one of the last things you will need to do is you're going to want to grab whatever adhesive you have. Again, I use Gorilla Glue. And you're going to want to put a little bit on these little cracks right here, if you can see that, on both sides. And the way I recommend doing that is getting a Q-tip or something similar, putting a little bit of super glue on that, and going in very carefully and putting it right there as I pointed out, all around the orange right there. Try not to get any excess in the plunger tube itself, because that can cause problems with the blaster itself. So, just make sure you're careful about that. I'm not going to show that right now because of the fact of it's pretty simple to do, and trying to get that on camera would be a pain in the butt. So that's the best I can really help you out with. Just pretend this is a Q-tip, put some super glue on that, and just go around in a circle on the orange part down there until you can see it's covered in glue. Well, not covered, but has a bit of glue down there. Now that might take a bit of practice when you put it back into the hammer shot. If you can see it's not exactly getting the energy out, then try putting a little bit more. I would also recommend, possibly, if you want to make sure you're really good about it, do the same around the edges, just to make sure you 100% get that proper seal. And now, the most important, or one of the most important parts, this is new when it comes to the Dead Space filler. The old Dead Space filler, you had to cut up pieces of Mega Dart. But now, Radio is including little foam gaskets. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to grab your glue. You're just going to want to put just a little. Not too much, because if you put too much, then it's just going to get all messy. But you're going to want to put some super glue around that. And just put that right there. Push downwards. And it should look like that. Yep, just like that. And then you're going to want to let that sit for a little bit. However long your split. I have buttery hands today for some reason. For however long your adhesive says it needs to sit for. This says about 30 seconds. So, I shall see you in 30 seconds. Hoi. Alrighty, so the glue has set. As you can tell, it is a different time of day because the glue took longer than expected. So, make sure that your foam gasket is nice and sealed, that there's no parts where it's lifting up. If you want to, like I said, put a little bit of glue around here just to make sure it makes that tight seal. Along with in here, that part is definitely necessary. Because if it escapes through that hole, then you have a little bit of, drop off. And yeah, just make sure you have it in the right orientation. You want to make sure this is facing downwards, with this peg facing that way. And we are now ready to put the hammer shot back together. So, grab all your pieces that you had set aside in that little bucket. And you just put it back together. So, first we're going to start off with the housing, like we did before. How you're going to want to put this in is you're going to want to basically, do it how you did before. You're going to want to push that in. Now, because of the fact that there's a little bit of glue, like I said, you don't want to have too much excess on this part because it will make it harder to get in. There we go. Now that that's in. Now, this would be a great time, if I can find it. There we go. This is going to be a great time to lube the parts. So, once we get to that part, I'll have that right there. And we're going to grab our first pin and put in the hammer assembly. Again, the longer pin goes right there, as you can see, right below that little arm. And then we're going to want to grab our hammer plunger assembly, grab our lube, and just go a little bit around the O-ring. You don't want to do too much, because if you put too much lube, then dirt will stick into your blaster like a magnet. So just enough. Just like that. Not much, but just enough to get some more lubrication. You're going to want to rub that around in the plunger tube a little bit. Because what I see most people don't realize is, just like with firearms, you do need to take care of your blaster. Otherwise, it will not function as well as it did out of the box. Now, you don't have to lube it like crazy, like every time you use it, but it is good I'd say it depends on how much you use it. If you use it like every other week or every week, then you might want to lube it around every month. If you only go to a game about once a month, then about every 2-3 months. Also, it depends on where you live. I'll probably go into a Morox mod tips video on how much and when you should open up and maintenance your blasters. Because if I tried to go into that ramble right now, this would be a 40-minute video, if it's not already. So, you're going to want to grab that little spring, put it right there, And the trigger spring is a bit of a pain in the butt to get in, but hold it like that with that little piece sticking upwards. And, oh, forgot to show that part. See, this is why it's a pain to put the new ones back together. But you're going to want to put this small pin right there. It should look like that. And I have to put this other pin back in because for some reason Nerf decides that, you know, it's not important to keep things captive. But I'm not the one that made the blaster, so that's not my decision. So, like I said, put that back there. And now, to put in our trigger spring. You may need help of your screwdriver or any sort of object to help push the spring down, because sometimes it can get caught, because that just happens. So it should look something like that. It's hard to show you without the pins falling out. Oh, there we go. You're gonna want your spring, that little piece right there, if you can see that. You're gonna want that resting on this little post right here. Otherwise, your trigger spring will not be springy enough, and that's not good. So we're going to put this plate on, and we are now going to put our screws back in. Make sure you have your screws, make sure they lock in before you start screwing them in, otherwise you will have lots and lots of stripped screws when you are done with your blaster. I see a lot of new people doing that all the time. So, there we go. Now that we have that captive, you're going to want to put your spring back in. And all you need to do is just lift up your rod a little bit and basically do what you did to basically get it out of there in the first place. It should look like that. Make sure it locks. And then you are going to want to put your return spring back. Like that. And now, oh, also don't forget this part. You want to make sure that goes back in, like that. And now, your hammer shot is ready to reassemble. I hope this was helpful. Now to the end of the video. Whee! Alrighty. I hope this video helped, and I hope you all enjoyed. If you are having any problems with your mod, you can email me at moroxmods@gmail.com. And if y'all just want to help support me, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I also have my Patreon down in the description. So, I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a lovely day. Mwah.